Senator Nampijinpa Price, let's have a chat to you, all right? Which is, the treaty process is one that is now starting to speed up. Queensland wants to get into treaty and truth-telling. Victoria has now started to get their version of the voice to start moving to their advice on treaty and truth-telling. We know that the Northern Territory is moving through the treaty process. What do you think of what's happened, particularly in Queensland today? It's way more serious than the voice, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a little bit concerning, because I don't think it's actually clear what this idea of truth-telling is, and again, to set up another bureaucracy that will require funding for this proposed truth-telling. I think it's always concerning because it doesn't outline what the practical outcomes of this is going to mean for Indigenous Queenslanders going forward. Again, I'm still trying to wrap my head around this idea that you have a treaty with your very own citizens and how that's supposed to work. But, you know, quite often we talk about jobs for the boys. What I see when it comes to creating treaty commissions or other bureaucracies around this sort of idea of truth-telling, as we keep talking about, that it's more jobs for the members of the gravy train. I mean, what else does it serve, really, going forward? And are we really being truthful and honest? When I hear the term truth-telling, I think those pushing it are about, again, talking about, well, this is what colonial, historical colonial past did to us. There's no discussion about truth within our own communities, within our own families, and the things that are affecting us right now in the immediate, what we're currently faced with as we're living. It's all looking toward the past again and propping up a grievance industry.
You're in Queensland right now, I think Bundaberg to be specific. I can recognise the background right now. Say good day to Keith for us in the next little while. Here is what the Queensland Premier had to say today.
This day has been coming for a long time. From this moment on, we start a formal path to treaty. It involves legislation that will enshrine the treaty process with independent bodies made of Indigenous and non-Indigenous members that will set the framework for truth-telling and healing.
Stephen, where are you on this? So the states seem to be a lot further down the road. I think this is going to complicate the process and the argument around the voice, because the voice is being sold in a very different fashion than what is being hammered out at the state and territory level.
Well, look, I think it's important that Albo said a few weeks back that he does intend to put much more detail out there for people to consider. I think that's a really big step. So I look forward to seeing all of the details. The people who want to argue that there isn't enough details, I suspect they're going to struggle as we go forward towards the vote. In terms of those processes, I mean, I'm a bit disappointed that Jacinta can say, I don't really understand what this means, and then be so opposed to it. I mean, if you don't understand it,
because it's empowering bureaucracy.
Then
it's empowering more bureaucry. And Indigenous
you open the door, mate.
It's really disappointing. It's really disappointing.
In our lives. It's really easy.
It's disappointing to see you wanting to blame the victims when you talk about your concern for these communities, and I share that concern. But to try and actually make it their fault, rather than to look at the broader problems that have led to these circumstances.
Why don't we get a group and call them the white voice, and they can speak on behalf of how legislation affects your life?
In this post-modernist world,
the Truth-Telling Commission might be an opportunity for the Indigenous community to have their say.
But okay,
you know what's best.
Honestly, Stephen, you cannot. I mean, the idiocy of you telling Jacinta Price what she ought to know about her own people is ridiculous. But what is clear...
I didn't say that at all, Bronwyn.
But in this so-called truth-telling...
That's just totally false.
No, it's not false. You listen to the tape back.
No, you just completely verbal
let me finish my
and
point,
said something I didn't say.
And let's put it this way, that there is not one voice. There are a multitude of voices. And Jacinta very clearly puts the case of her care about families she knows, about people she knows, that are just getting no justice at all and never will under the Aboriginal industry of victimhood, leaves alone and doesn't help. So her voice is entitled to be heard. Other voices are entitled to be heard, and that's why the concept of a single voice is not relevant. And that's because it's simply not true.
We were talking about truth-telling.
And when you said that there's going to be appointed people about truth-telling, who are going to be the truth-tellers? Which voices are going to be heard? Which ones are going to be stamped out? There is no single... and as I said, in this postmodernist world, we're all told we have our own truth and it has to be respected. And yet there is no respect for Jacinta's
that's Trump
strong
and Kellyanne
and powerful
Conway.
voice.
All right, Stephen, a quick retort and then the final word to the Senator.
Yeah. I'm suggesting that the process, and Jacinta might want to appear and make her point. No one's trying to close down Jacinta's point of view. That's a completely false statement by Bronwyn.
Okay.
But there are others who would like to make
can appear,
other
not decide.
points. And this, the committee itself will be made up of Indigenous community members.
All right, Senator, you get the last say.
I'm not deciding anything.
Chosen by who?
Senator, you get the last say on either this discussion or what I was trying to talk about.
Let's just say, no, I am not blaming victims in anything. In fact, I have been fighting to allow for voices of victims in remote communities to be heard who have largely been ignored by the grievance industry and by the gravy train that the Labor government seeks to empower within our constitution. And they're the voices that I'm interested in that are largely ignored, but instead it's certainly individual, let's say, males of Caucasian background that lean to the left that have been some of my biggest rivals going forward with this argument. And yet, you know, your lives are completely removed. You're not connected to these remote communities one bit. You've probably never even stepped into any of these remote communities, and yet you have the audacity to suggest that, one, I blame victims, and there's other people out there that suggest I do other things because I am simply trying to fight for those who are never heard over the top of your voices or the voices of those in the grievance industry who are sitting pretty on incomes higher than my own. And they're the ones that are going to be empowered through this idea of a voice, because it's a bureaucracy.
I'm looking forward to everybody's voice being heard, yours included, Jacinta.
All right. Well, you know what I promise? What I promise is a voice for all of you over 2 segments next week, all right? But alas, it's only one now. Thank you very much, guys. Do appreciate it. We'll see you all again very soon.